Welcome to Coffee Break, guys. It is Merrick TV. Super glad to have you guys here. We're going to be discussing, among other things, MMO monetization in the games that we all play and love. There's so many different ways to do this. A lot of ways that are really bad. Big scary words like pay to win. Subscriptions that used to have a different connotation than they do today. There's definitely some things that work in some games and don't work in some other games. So we're going to discuss everything there is about the way in which video games ask you for money and whether or not it's worth it and how best to do that. In addition to that, I would like to discuss just a tiny bit about the World of Warcraft stuff that happened today. We got some big news in the world of Warcraft. In the world of Warcraft. Okay, anyway. So we got a lot of exciting things to go over. Welcome to Coffee Break.
World of Warcraft mounts.
World of Warcraft mounts. Dude, we're going to show it. We have to talk about it, but in a bit.
Did you want to talk about that first? We can talk about that first if you'd like.
I mean, we can. So I linked this a second ago, guys. Listen. There's a new expansion for World of Warcraft. It's very exciting. I'm not off of I'm not on the World of Warcraft must burn train. I know a lot of people are. I still think that the game is very important to the genre as a whole. I think World of Warcraft has a lot to offer. They've been dropping the ball a lot for their community. I mean, obviously, outside of the big drama, right? We're not going to talk about that. Obviously, that's terrible. There's no excusing any of that. But outside of that kind of stuff, even just as a game, they've disappointed their fan base time and time again. I think Legion at the heart of Legion was the only time that people were really the last time people were really happy. The most recent stuff, I think the story just really took a turn and kind of crapped out. Didn't really do a good job. From what I heard, and WoW fans, you guys can correct me out there, but I think that they did like a novel that runs concurrent to the story that really explains a lot more, that sort of makes it better, but a lot of fans are really pissed that they have to buy and read a book to make the story in the game that they play suck less. So obviously there's a lot of stuff going on with the game, but today was the big announcement for the next expansion, all about dragons. So that's cool, right? Us Guild Wars 2 players were like pulling our hair out, like not more dragons, but this is obviously a different world. This is the World of Warcraft. They have a very rich history with the dragon flights. It's a good story to tell. Just as a Guild Wars 2 player, I'm like, dragons need to end, right? The end of dragons. But in addition, endless dragons. But in addition to all of this, they also dropped some cool stuff about mounts, and this pertains specifically to Guild Wars 2. It's funny because I saw this as I was posting the Twitter update for Coffee Break. I saw somebody post a tweet about this, so I just found it. I don't have it set up on my streaming PC to show. Unfortunately, is what it comes down to. But this is the link. Let me see if I can just post it. Okay. If you click that, is there a better way for me to do that? Anyway, the mount that they've added is basically it's the Guild Wars 2 mounts, guys. Like, they literally show the act of Griffin flying, and then they show the act of Skyscale flying. Like, it is literally, yeah. Noboy says, I've seen that mount somewhere. It is a direct copy. In fact, I want to shout out Metallics from Twitter, who was the one who posted it. He had like a tweet that was like, WoW says, hey, Guild Wars 2, can I copy your homework? And Guild Wars 2 says, yeah, sure. Just change it to make it not look like it's exactly mine.
Exactly the same.
And then World of Warcraft, and then this video, which is hysterical because it's identical in every way.
But I mean, a question, does anybody, has anyone said what it feels like? Because I know, like, the mechanics of the mount of the Griffin in Guild Wars 2 has a certain feel to it. Is this as challenging because we have races and all sorts of things, or is this more like the typical WoW mount where you just press the button to do a maneuver?
Well, have you watched the video? Click on that link right there.
I'm watching now,
because I should have it up. And sorry guys, again, if I would have known, I would have had this up ready to go. But it is identical. Like the dash downward ability, and then the increased momentum, even like the screen wind shear that happens around the outside effect and all of that, and then the sky scale flap with the twirls, the twirl dash. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like you could have made it just a little bit different and not have it be so glaring. So I'd really like to talk about that. After we welcome Loranity and her gigantic raid into the chat. Welcome, guys. So glad to have you here. Loranity is honestly one of my very favorite people and streamers in the world. She needs absolutely no introduction from little old Merrick TV. I hope you guys are already following and subscribing, but Loranity, we love you. You're awesome. You're amazing. Welcome to Coffee Break, guys. This is an MMO podcast. We're supposed to be discussing the topic of the day, which is monetization in MMOs. How games make money, how they ask you for money, how they entice you to spend more money, and different MMOs do it in different ways. There's tried and true models, things that work in some games and not other games, RNG, loot boxes, all sorts of things we're going to cover today. But we got distracted with this link. With World of Warcraft. I don't know if you guys saw the big WoW update, but as Guild Wars 2 players, how do you not laugh when you click that link? Please, everyone in chat, I suck because I just saw this as we were about to start the podcast, so I don't have it set it up on my streaming PC, but click that link and roll your eyes collectively with the rest of the Guild Wars 2 community. Just do it. You'll like it. You'll love this. It's going to be great. Click that link.
Honestly, when I first clicked the link, Merrick, I was like, why are Guild Wars 2's graphics so weird?
Yeah. I will say to Junie's point earlier, unless they've done a lot of
Griffin scale, exactly,
fudging, like a lot of tweaking to make this mount feel a certain way. Just by putting the mechanics and the mount from Guild Wars 2 into WoW, it's not going to feel exactly the same because the physics are drastically different, right? Like, I don't think you're going to feel that same weight when you come. When you're coming out of the downward swoop and into the glide, it has that momentum that
has the momentum and increased momentum based on the amount that you've done, right? So, like, what you want to do is press 1 and then press V or dodge or whatever it is to do the extra double dodge, and then you get the extreme momentum, which is basically roller beetle speed. I mean, it's like freaking insane. You're right. It may not be as nuanced, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a more linear like coefficient, and you could basically plot it out on a graph very succinctly. And with Guild Wars 2, it feels alive, it feels real, and I think you're going to feel that difference because just of how the physics engines work. And we not to distract from the topic, but we talk about jumping puzzles and jumping in Guild Wars 2 and how that's almost incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to replicate in another MMO because of how the physics work with Guild Wars 2's jumping, being able to change midair and change trajectory and stuff like that.
Guys, I could have an entire podcast on jumping physics in MMOs. Okay, I have a lot to say, a lot of complaints. Like a lot of you guys coming from Loranity's stream, you're all Guild Wars 2 players, right? Or at least a large portion of you are. If you've only played MMOs in Guild Wars 2, you're terribly spoiled and you don't know, because jumping and just the physics, right? Let's just call it the broader physics engine that's in Guild Wars 2 is one of its biggest highlights. It's one of its biggest things to boast. If you jump in a regular game, like in World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, the moment you've left the floor, you're on a set trajectory. You cannot alter the trajectory mid-jump. Now, Merrick, you say, that sounds like real life. If I jump off a cliff, I can't change my trajectory mid-jump, and that's true. But what we really want is for a game to feel good and satisfying, to give you control. We want control. And in terms of platforming, right, which is what jumping puzzles are, things like that, to platform, you have to be able to adjust yourself mid-air a little bit. And that's what Guild Wars 2 does so perfectly. You ever want to pull your hair out? You ever want to hate everything in the world? Go to Final Fantasy 14 and do a jumping puzzle. Because they exist. Ask me why they exist in a game that has terrible jumping. I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah, so I do think there's going to be some things that make it feel different. I think I'm curious, since this is just something we found out recently, what the general reaction is going to be from players of both games. Me personally, I feel bad for Guild Wars 2 because this is their thing. Mounts are their thing. It's the one big thing that they do. They can't really, no other game, there isn't really any other MMO that can claim to even remotely come close to what Guild Wars does with mounts.
Here. Yeah, absolutely. One of its biggest claims to fame, for sure.
It definitely. So it feels bad for them that they're kind of not losing it, but that that WoW is taking a stab at it, right? So we'll see. We'll see how it turns out, but I feel bad for them. I'm not really mad at Blizzard at
Dude, there
WoW.
it is. Yeah. I'm not either, and I want to read what Loranity said. Lara says, I like WoW copying that mounts are more interesting, but they shouldn't have 100% copied the animations, because that's what's so cringy, right? So for those of you guys who have watched the podcast before, Cryptic, Junie, and I often say that that there should be an MMO summit, right? MMOs as a genre are very interesting, because instead of like, if you go to the video game store and you're like, should I buy Street Fighter or Kirby's Dream Land? It's like, why would you're just going to buy both? Like, they don't replace one or the other. But in MMOs, most people play a single MMO at a time. And MMO players, like the real diehard players of the genre, they're always playing one MMO, right? Quitting one simply means leaving to go to another one, right? And then you go to the other one, you're like, burned out on that other one, it sucks. This new one is so great. And then eventually, like, the bad things settle in, and then you go back. But the thing that drives me crazy is trying to reinvent the wheel, or like the audacity that a developer can have to go into the genre, make a new MMO, and then do something that has already been done so much better, terribly. Why would you do that? Like, it's incumbent upon you to go out into the world and explore the genre when you're making a new MMO and be like, our system freaking sucks compared to this other game that has a much better way of doing this. Why not copy, like, literally, guys, like, why not copy something that's better, right? Like, I don't care. You're not copying my homework. I'm not getting in trouble. I'm the end user. I'm the beneficiary of you copying the good stuff into your game. Like, I have no complaints. But I guess when it's so egregious, right? Like, it's almost a little cringy that you would do it so identically. So I agree with Lara 100% on this.
It's kind of like I mean, Junie will understand this. It's kind of like, you're working on a coding project or something, especially back in college, right? And you find something online that's you're like, oh, this is exactly what I need. You don't just copy and paste it.
You can't do that. So
you have to. You understand how it works, and then you implement it.
Oh, come on! 90% of development is copying, but you can't just copy and paste. It doesn't work that way. You can't just copy.
Although, Ian said something in chat, like, they probably think they're trying to take an existing thing and improve on it, which is what they are trying to do. But sometimes that improvement really doesn't pan out, and it ends up being much, much worse.
Yeah, true.
And I just think, like, it just comes across as a bad look. It's a bad look for them to literally copy and paste the animations, and because the look to something that looks like a sky scale, doesn't it? Like,
yeah, and the animations are just spot on. It's just so bizarre, right? You're like, it's the flap and the twirl. Like, they didn't need to be exactly that. Like, we can't pretend. It's so much so that we can't pretend that they were just like oblivious and like, we're World of Warcraft, we live in the sky, we're so much above you, we don't even look at your stuff. They looked, And how could you not? How could you think
clarification? Cardi was asking in chat, and just for anyone else that's wondering, basically, WoW came out with there's a trailer or a snippet of a new mount that they're releasing. Merrick just linked it in chat.
Linked it again
with the new expansion. And the mount is basically a direct copy of the Griffin and the Sky Scale put together from Guild Wars 2. So WoW is copying Guild Wars 2. As we've all said previously, or me, Junie, and Merrick, we don't think, correct me if you guys disagree in any way, but we don't think it's a bad thing. It's just, it feels, and I applaud, congratulations to WoW for improving their mount system. It just feels weird. It feels weird having the animations and other little facets about it, like some of the effects when you're doing the dive bomb, and even the mount itself looks so similar to a Sky Scale. Those are the little details that you put in to show that you understand what you're taking from the other game, and you're putting your own spin on it to make it feel like it belongs in WoW, and not that it's just because that looks like it belongs in Guild Wars. Junie said earlier, what happened to Guild Wars graphics?
She thought it was Guild Wars 2 with weird graphics. Exactly. It's just weird.
So you have to do something to make it feel like it's part of your game and not just straight from another game, because then it just does feel out of place.
Well, and it's a big thing, right? Like, mounts are a huge thing. We're going to be talking about monetization in MMOs. This is the actual topic of today's coffee break. And mounts are a big part of that, right? They always have been a big part of that. But if you come from Guild Wars 2, and I think it was Ian that said, like, people should explore around in different MMOs to see, like, how spoiled we are in a couple of ways, especially in Guild Wars 2.
We are.
And we are, because if you go and you get a mount in World of Warcraft, and trust me, mounts are more coveted in World of Warcraft than they are in Guild Wars 2 by about 1,000 times. Like, people covet them. They love them. They want them. They collect them. They have mount offs. You ever watch Asmongold stream? Like, they have this mount off thing where they just flex all their mount skins and stuff. Like, it's a huge deal. But if you mount up in World of Warcraft, you're basically just activating swimming mode. You can just swim in any direction, and your mount just hovers. There's no performance of the mount. You know what I mean? I think somebody, again, I use this term all the time. Someone coined it a while ago, but it's the joy of movement in Guild Wars 2, right? The way your character moves, the way it feels, the way you can jump that we were talking about a moment ago, gliding, jumping off cliffs, the verticality of the game, the mounts, the various mounts that could do different things, the performance of the mount. We literally have roller beetle racetracks, man. Like there's a racing game inside our MMO. These things are just insane. And Griffin racing, with real skill that it takes to perform these things. I mean, we are incredibly spoiled.
So before we move on, I do have a question for the chat. And I don't know, maybe this should be a poll, but just a question for the chat.
Poll.
For people that play WoW, when you get this mount, is there any other reason to use any other mount other than fashion, other than your mount off competitions?
Well, we don't know the details, right? I mean, it could be that you can only use it in the new zones. It could be that you can only use it during certain story missions. It could be that you can only use it. Like, my guess is there's no way that they would invalidate every other mount possible, and not every other mount in the game. Like, it's clearly a dragon mount, right? The story is about dragons. There's a new dragon race, effectively, a new dragon area. It's very likely to me that it's only going to be usable in the new zones.
And how fast is it going compared to other mounts? Maybe the time it takes from point A to point B will end up being almost the same, if not the same.
It looked fast.
Maybe only fast temporarily, though. Like it could. What if it's slower before you do the burst, and then it's fast, and then that ends up equaling about the same time as a regular mount?
Taz, welcome to the stream, man. First time viewer, really appreciate it. So this isn't one mount; it's a skill, and you customize the mount to your taste. But absolutely not this. That seems to be the only relevant flying mount. Not that it seems to be the only relevant flying mount. So again, there's probably going to be a bunch of details here that we just don't know. I haven't watched all of the stuff. There was a ton of virtual content today to watch, to stream. I'm behind, and I just saw this hilarious tweet on Twitter about this just before we started the stream. So we had to touch on it, especially since, of course, mounts are a big part of monetization in MMOs, which is what we're going to be talking about now.
Right now.
Question mark?
Let's go. Yeah, let's dive into it. So obviously the main topic about our podcast today is monetization MMOs. And there are so many different ways to monetize MMOs.
Yep.
But before we get into probably the nitty gritty stuff, I want to talk about the first monetization that hits everyone when you start playing an MMO. And when an MMO first comes out, which is pre-orders, early access, that kind of stuff. We're seeing it more and more. You remember when games used to come out and you just would buy a game and you'd just be happy buying the game? Every game's
I'm
early
not that
access
old.
now.
I don't know what you mean.
Okay.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No idea at all. I could buy that. I totally buy that. Yeah.
I'm actually 18. Thanks for asking. You never asked, but if you wanted to know.
Oh, okay. All right. It concerns me a little bit, but we'll talk about that later.
What do you mean?
So, used to be able to buy games, MMOs included, and that was it. Sub fees were obviously a thing. We'll get into that very shortly. But there's a trend now where everything is going early access. Lost Ark had an early access phase, and a pre-order would get you into it. New World had an early access phase, and a pre-order would get you into it. And I promise you, Ashes of Creation is going to have an early access phase. If you don't think Ashes of Creation is going to have an early access phase, you're fooling yourself. They are a crowd-funded game. They are going to take the chance to get more money before they launch. It's just common sense. It's good business for them, but is it good for the consumer? I think that's the general question is here. Do we feel this form of monetization helps the consumer and helps the game? Because we don't really care about the business too much. As long as they can keep providing us the game, then we're happy. We don't care how much money they make.
Do you mean, is it worthwhile? Like, do we think that it's a good thing for them to allow early access for people to spend money to experience the game ahead of time before the game is out? Sort of like a closed beta for supporters or early
early access is generally considered a distinct advantage because you are paying for more time. This isn't a closed beta. Your account doesn't get wiped. I know what you're thinking about, Mark. You're thinking about the early access to New World that we had.
New World.
Way in
yes,
advance.
Absolutely. A year early, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the 2-week early access that people had the New World that paid for the extra, or with Lost Ark, remember, you get the 2-week. I'm talking about those kind of early accesses.
Yeah, I don't like that, actually. I find that to be... So, so with Lost Ark...
It was only what, $10 for the cheapest one for Lost Ark.
Yeah,
Right,
Lost Ark.
yeah.
I didn't feel like angry about the way that Lost Ark did that, and the stuff with New World was just a pre-order, right? If you had pre-ordered the game, you got to play early access. Which in that case, I don't think it was intended to be a full year or whatever at the time, right? But it ended up being because they pushed the game back.
We ended up getting a thing. I correct me if I'm wrong. Anybody that played New World, I played New World. I thought, I believe that there was a couple of day people got in. Didn't people get in a couple of days early if you had pre-ordered as well?
Yeah, some kind
I
of.
thought there was like a
thing.
rollout or something.
I mean, even Guild Wars 2 did, right? They had the full weekend. I think you got like the head start. It was like Friday night or something. You had Saturday, Sunday, and then the regular game started on Monday. I do remember that because I was in it, and when I enjoyed it, and it was great, and I was like, man, this like big, amazing, cool world, and there's people here. This is nice. And then all of a sudden, like Monday rolled around, and there was a gargantuan amount of people coming to the game. I mean, I was stunned at how many people were not in the early access compared to how many people started on Monday. It was wild.
Yes, Flying Triangle confirmed New World did have its own. So I remembered it because I participated in it.
Sweet William also exposed me. He said, EverQuest is an impressive start for an 18-year-old. I mean, how old is EverQuest now? I think it's like 23 years old. So, that's
well,
tough.
also, like Andrushan said,
before I was born.
Like Andrushan said in chat, Lost Ark is, only had what, 3 days early access. And I think that's a lot better than maybe putting it for like a week or two, because you don't want to have to drag out the hype where everybody's really excited, but then most of the players don't even get to play, and then they kind of like trickle in later. But I think actually the way Lost Ark did it was fantastic, because you if you were excited, if you really did want to spend that extra money, you could get in right away, but your friends didn't have to wait too long to get in right after you.
And then we were telling them that too, right? We were like, guys, we're playing Lost Ark. It's super awesome. It costs you $10 right now if you want to play, but in 2 or 3 days, it's going to be free, right? And then you can come and check it out. So it wasn't a huge deal. There wasn't, and it's odd because I think that most MMOs, I feel like that head start isn't the end of the world because you're not racing. Or you don't have to be, right? In Lost Ark, it is more of that kind of game.
Was, yeah.
So that head start for anybody who was going to take Lost Ark very seriously, the way that game's systems were built, it gave you like a huge advantage basically towards doing that. So I think it depends on the game itself. I don't think it's super offensive to be like $10 early access or pre-order a game early access as long as it's an early access weekend. Some people, that might be a hot take. Some people might disagree with that, but I definitely think there's room for that.
I think there's room. I think one of the key things that, I mean, you did mention that Lost Ark, it actually is more of an advantage than other MMOs. But I think one of the things that made Lost Ark more palatable is obviously it was the shorter time frame, like you said. But
Pee-wee? What do you
fact
mean?
that the game was free to play in general, right? Kind of made that like, okay, this is a way for them to earn some, to monetize their game. And we also got, the players that purchased this also got currency and stuff equivalent to the money that they spent. So this is a way for them to monetize their game and reward players for spending money without, without pushing the needle one direction too far or the other.
Sure.
So I think in free-to-play games that can kind of work. I think it gets sketchy when we're talking about sub-fee games. I believe Ashes of, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Ashes of Creation is going to be sub-fee.
Not to spoil my perspective, but please God, let it be. So I'm just kidding. Sorry, I don't want to. I have to. I'm supposed to hold off on my opinion about monetization.
Podcast over.
Okay, thanks for coming, guys. Ashes of Creation, sub fee, please. I'll see you next week.
No, I mean, I do believe Ashes of Creation is going to be sub fee, and that's where I think we start crossing a line. When you're already expecting, players are already putting in money to play this game on a consistent basis, to give some people an advantage by asking them to put in more money. Yes, Flying Triangle. Flying Triangle is my wiki. I am going to literally post all the questions I'm unsure about.
Just ask Flying Triangle.
Ask Flying Triangle. No, I thought I remembered it. There was going to be a sub fee, but asking players to then invest more money just so they can stay competitive with other players, because Ashes of Creations has territory, right? So that will be a thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That will be a thing, excluding territory from other people. And the way that they talked about how they want the world to build based off of which people have taken over which areas, which people have done, this, that, and the other. that can drastically affect how one person experiences the game to another. And for that can be to be determined based off of, you know, 10, 20, $30, whatever it might be, when they already have to pay a
Hmm.
sub fee. I feel like maybe crossing a line. We will see when Ashes of Creation's released what they end up doing. If their early access will be given away as like a lottery, if it will be paid. I'm just very confident it will have one. I can't imagine
Don't you
them
think it'll, because it's a
not doing it.
crowdfunded game, right? That's like the most common reward for
Reward,
like
yeah.
for people who have pitched in money for a crowdsourced game. I would be shocked if they don't. I would also be shocked if I don't end up becoming one of them, because if that's what it takes, I will. I'm very excited for Ashes of Creation. We're putting all of our eggs in that basket. It's a very delicate basket. Every MMO is. I'm afraid of what's going to happen, but for me, it should be a big one.
Well, what about the Alpha 1 though, that they have for beta testers to have access for spot testing for Ashes of Creation?
See, so I will never do an alpha. I just couldn't do it now. I could do an alpha in a game that I didn't care about, right? If I'm really excited about a game, I wouldn't allow myself to do alpha. It just really paints your perspective on a game beforehand. But I mean, that's probably not what you asked, but I would never want to do that.
No, I mean, I think we kind of feel the same about betas as well, right? I mean, betas are kind of scary to get into.
But
They're
in this case, you're paying for that, right?
Well,
for Ashes of Creation, not all betas you have to pay for. A lot of times
Yeah,
you'll just put in an application and get chosen.
I mean, and at the same time though, like, and especially with crowdsourced games, right, which is what we're seeing a lot of these days. Andrew Sean and I often talk about Pantheon: Rise of the Fallen. It's another game that we're really looking forward to. Extremely crowdfunded. It's a passion project kind of game. When you've got that kind of stuff, you have to incentivize people to want to do that. But one of the cool things, because they really try to get interactive with their people, like that Alpha 1 kind of thing, which you're paying a lot of money for. For some people, it feels like you're getting to influence, and this is how they advertise it. You're getting to influence the direction of the game, right? They're supposed to be interacting with you, asking you questions, seeing what you like, what you think. It gives you a forum to speak directly to the developers before the game comes out. There are some people that really like that. Do I fault them for doing it? The answer is no. I want to be very clear. I wouldn't do it. I don't think that I would do it. Do I want it to stop? And that answer is no. If people are very passionate about a game, they're really passionate about a game, they're helping it to come out by spending that money, right? If this is the incentive that it takes them to do that, and the real passionate people get to go in, test some stuff out, and give their opinion back to the developers, I don't actually see anything wrong with that. I don't care about the advantages that somebody has prior to launch of a game. When the game comes out, that's when it really matters, right? So I wouldn't do it for all the reasons that I said. I think that it kind of ruins your perspective about a game. I think it sort of paints it. I don't like to... I'm a big dorky role player, guys. It may not seem it. I know I'm a meta raider and all this stuff, but the truth is like, I want to be able to not pull up the curtain, right? I don't want to look behind the curtain. I don't want to Wizard of Oz this thing. I would rather think that it's all magic. And when you see the buggy stuff and the alpha graphics and all that stuff, like, man, you can't unsee that. The world of it just being like a crappy video game for a while, you know? Well, and Sean says I'm an alpha 2 for AOC, which I regret. Interesting.
So my question is, because I agree with you, Merrick. I think that that's paying to show not only your support for a game, but because you support and care about it, you're so interested in it, you want to get to see what the building blocks are like. You want to see behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
My question is, what happens when that turns into an actual advantage, which we are seeing if the MMO ever comes out, Star Citizen. People are paying. I am one of those people who have paid.
I was going to say, aren't you one of those people?
I am one of those people. Not as bad as most people. I have kept it within a realm of normal is not the right word, but not insanity. But people have paid for ships and in-game items and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Most of those things they have received it to some capacity in the game right now in the early access form, and the game is being built out and et cetera, et cetera. There's only one system. We're getting a second system, blah, 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 blah. So they're getting to use these things in game now, but eventually when the game goes live, when all the betas are done, all the alphas are done, and it's a real game, and the assets all get reset, those people that paid for those assets are still going to have those assets. They will be reset back to what they paid for, but they will have them. and people that are starting fresh will not have them.
Well, and that's the very essence of pay to win, right? Like you're just paying ahead of time. Like somehow it feels veiled because it's before the games come out, but like paying for a tangible, like practical advantage in a game is the hot button issue. And this is something that for Guild Wars 2 players is a really weird, blurry line. I want to, just because most of us are Guild Wars 2 players, it's kind of exciting. Like it's this weird outlier in terms of this entire discussion, because if years ago, if you would have told me, like before I played Guild Wars 2, by the way, you can just buy gold in this game anytime from day one, just forever, just buy as much gold as you want with money. Like in MMOs of old, that got you banned. You were like in real trouble for that. You couldn't do that. You were buying a tangible advantage over other people. Guild Wars 2 is so weird. They have walked this very fine line for a very long time and done so successfully. If you could just spend a ton of money and get like the best stuff in the game for a game like Star Citizen where it's going to matter, I think that it's a problem, right? That's an issue.
So the best stuff is not really available. It gets complicated, but the best stuff in most cases is not available. So there will still be things to work towards. And their argument for it not being pay to win, I disagree with this argument, but I'm going to lay it out, is that it is pay for an advantage for certain people, but the world itself, it's basically building out the world to have the universe to have things in it that it should already. People should, since it's going to be entirely player driven, everyone in the world is not going to start, because this is a future society. People should have things already. Not everyone is going to start with nothing. Some people are going to have some stuff already. And that's the argument, that it is flushing out the world to have a functioning economy as the game starts, and not a, we've seen, New World has its own set of problems. We've seen New World, Lost Ark. A lot of MMOs, when they come out, their economy is up and down, up and down. And
New World's a good example of that. Yep.
Yeah, and there were other reasons for that, not just because it was a new MMO. I want to have a whole rant about New World economy. We're going to have a whole podcast just about why I hate it.
There have been. I've seen them, man. Like that. There's a lot of stuff going on with that game.
It's so messed up. But their idea is, because EVE Online is an entirely player-driven economy. Their idea is they want to do something like that, where it is almost entirely player-driven, but they want it to have a leg up out of the gate, right? And not be something that they have to constantly tweak and tune and try to, protect this player-driven economy from falling into, a pit, out of the gate. So, I get where they're coming from. I also think it's still pay to win, though, right? Like, there's no,
I do too. Also, Sweet Williams says, do you think the ability to buy gold with real money makes Guild Wars 2 pay to win? I would like to hear everyone's answer on this. I really would. I think it's very fascinating. The answer is no, not to me, because I wouldn't play the game for this long if it really did. But you know what's weird? It's not because of the system that they have, right? Buying gold with money should, in 90% of games, give you like a real tactical advantage, a tangible advantage over your fellow gamers. So it's not the system that makes it not pay to win. It's the game that makes it not pay to win, right? Guild Wars 2 is weird, guys. Again, like I encourage you to try other MMOs so you can kind of see how this game is so different. But it's that money can't really buy you that tangible advantage. I recently watched a video by Criparian. I don't know if you guys know Crip, but he is like a popular streamer, content creator, played a lot of different things. Came back to Guild Wars 2 recently just to kind of give it a look, do like a review. And it was so fascinating because he made a character when the game first came out. And he had a character to level 80 and he got like exotic berserker gear for it, right? And then he left for like 8 years and he came back, or 6 years or something. And he just came back and looked it up, and he sort of gave a cool speech about this, which is really true, right? Like he's ready to walk into a raid today. Like, isn't that wild to you? Like 6 years of not playing this game. The character that he made 6 years ago that was level 80 in a berserker gear, exotic berserker gear, he could walk into a raid today. What we get from money in Guild Wars 2 amounts to fashion and convenience. The little goals that we give ourselves that none of which give you a tangible advantage over anybody else. You could speed up a process. You could buy yourself some convenience. But if we both walk into the same raid, we're on the same playing field. You know, if we both walk into PvP, there's no advantage there. There's no twinking of lower level characters or anything like that. So I really feel like it's the game's unique systems, the horizontal progression of Guild Wars 2 that protects it from being pay to win, because otherwise it very, very much would be. My real qualm with this is that all of that money that buys that fashion, I often feel like more of that fashion should be in the game also. So when you readjust your parameters to how do you win Guild Wars 2, if your parameters are to look freaking awesome and to look better than Cryptic does or whatever it is, then you really are getting advantage, right? So it's sort of a weird dynamic in that. But Junie, how do you feel? Do you feel like being able to buy gold in this game in Guild Wars 2 makes it pay to win, or is a negative thing?
No, I don't actually. And I think it's partly because you can do all of the content in the game without it. So even with legendaries, yeah, it's great to be able to buy gold and get legendaries, but you can get ascended gear relatively easily, and you can do anything in ascended gear that you can do in legendary. So really, in my opinion, the reason I've never wanted a legendaries until recently. I had kind of given up totally on legendary armor. I felt like it was a total waste of my own funds or in-game resources. And the thing that really changed it for me was convenience. So
free transmute.
I think that buying gold in Guild Wars 2 correlates more to paying for convenience, and that's always kind of been much more palpable in games in general, and the convenience of being able to just switch your stats for legendary armor, or for instance, like Marek said, transmute the things. Like that's really what made the difference for me considering that. But no, I don't think it's pay to win, because you can experience the whole game without it.
That's true. I'm gonna give you my best example of this. Ready? World of Warcraft is and has always been a subscription game, right? It has a store, but not really, and it's mainly a subscription game. You can spend money to get services like change your name or change your guild name or like change your race or your class or switch servers or whatever, right? You can spend money for that, and I really think that that's a good thing. That's a good way for games to make money. I totally get that. I want all those options all the time. So when games don't have that ability, it's a big disappointment. So that's fine. But coming from Guild Wars 2 and the way that it's been for a long time, like Junie, tell me if you had this experience. When I really get into World of Warcraft, I'm like, man, I love this game. I love my character. This is so cool. I have lamented the lack of ability to open the cash shop and buy some cool outfit. I really have. I've lamented that. I've been like, man, I love this game. I love my character. I got an outlaw pirate. He's got an eye patch and a parrot on his shoulder. He's freaking awesome. I would love to buy a pirate mount or like some sort of cool pirate skin. Like, I get excited every Tuesday to open up the gem store in Guild Wars 2. Every Tuesday. Like, this is something that I've gotten used to and that I like. I just discovered that it's a real balance, basically. So Cryptic, what do you think about Guild Wars 2? Is it pay to win?
No, Guild Wars 2 isn't pay to win. I mean, Guild Wars 2 is probably one of the games that treads the line between pay to win and non, like keeping it pay for convenience to the best out of any game really in general. I don't want to just limit it to MMOs. The prices for the things that you're buying are, I feel like, reasonable in today's market. And you don't feel compelled to need to buy anything. And there are, for the most part, good alternatives in game for the majority of things. If you want fashion, if you want convenience, and people forget about, even though it's, difficult to get them, people forget about, as far as convenience, the, like the merchant stuff, right? Like, endless, infinite access to the
bank access, express, and stuff like
exactly.
that.
Yeah. Like those, like the best version of you can get the one use ones from the gem store, but the best infinite versions of those is in game. You're not spending real money for that. You're spending, you could spend real money and get gold and buy them.
Yeah, you could. And you'd be spending a epic crap ton of money. And then the conversion on that is rough because those things are very expensive.
Exactly. So it's a balancing act, and I think they've done that balancing act really well. I don't feel compelled to buy anything in Guild Wars that feel like it's a necessity, which is not the case in other games. I mean, we talk about ESO. We think ESO has a decent model that's pretty well balanced. You still feel compelled. I feel compelled to pay that sub fee, right? Like, yeah. And that's just something that isn't the case in Guild Wars 2. And I think it's like you said, a lot of it boils down to being able to win. Everybody wins in different ways, but in Guild Wars 2, you can win in pretty much every way that you'd want to without having to put real money into it, other than buying the game.
It's basically in the competitive game modes, or at least in the comparative game modes, like that you could compare yourself to somebody else. Like Ian said, I don't think it's pay to win because anything you can buy in Guild Wars 2 doesn't really give you mad advantage over someone else's ability to win in PvP or World v World. But that extends to raids or fractals or whatever else. There's nothing that you can buy that's going to make you higher on the damage meters or be able to heal better than someone else or be able to kill somebody else better. It really just comes down to fashion, I guess. And in that way, I guess you're right, Cryptic. The ability to convert gold to gems, as well as gems to gold, sort of answers that, right? Like if you want to make a ton of gold and you want to buy that outfit from the gem store, you can do that. I just think that when it comes to pay to win, it isn't pay to win in the way that it matters, I guess, is kind of what it comes down to.
Well, I think when it comes to whether it matters or not, kind of depends a lot on, the individual. And everybody's going to have their own thing that is winning for them. Like I was listening to a podcast about BDO, and they were talking about what does it mean for pay to win as well in there. And a lot of the things they're coming up with was PvP answers. And somebody said, well, why is PvP what determines whether it's pay to win? My winning is PvE, Yeah. And I think somebody else's winning could be fashion. Guild Wars 2 is fashion is the end game, right? So
I mean, it is. I even think that your fashion quality affects your DPS in raids. I mean, it's just me. I believe it's true. I think it's really important.
Maybe you are paying to win then.
It's because I look so awesome in Guild Wars 2. Have you seen my fashion? It's Soul in chat. Have you seen my bard? It's fabulous.
So it's interesting, Cryptic, that you mentioned about in ESO you feel more compelled to buy things.
BDO, right? Was it BDO?
No.
ESO.
ESO,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And Andrew Sean also feels like ESO is pretty bad in that way. But I had the completely opposite experience with ESO. I came into that game and felt completely like unpulled by their store in pretty much my entire experience in the game. Like nothing seemed like, oh, I have to have that. And everything that you might want is offered to you in some manner in the game itself. It just and I think it was so blaring to me at the time because it was around the time the Guild Wars 2 was putting in the mount, the RNG mount licenses, which I was not pleased with, to put it mildly.
Juniper became one of the I don't know if you guys remember when they did the RNG mount stuff, the initial packs, you weren't able to get guarantees of anything. It was nothing but RNG, and there was an outcry of very angry players who did battle with ArenaNet in the forums for the first month that this happened, and they won. They changed it. And Juniper led the freaking charge. You guys can't imagine. She took the banner and made angry posts as she turned that Karen way up and wrote strongly worded letters. I'm just going to tell you.
It's the only thing I felt really strongly about. But and like I said, I think that may have tinted my experience with ESO. But at the time, I just felt like it wasn't as blaring in ESO as it was in Guild Wars 2 at that time. Although I do believe they have fixed that with the way they put out the mounts. Now I feel like that's a nice compromise that they did.
They addressed the same thing in ESO, actually. They made it so that it's the same as Guild Wars 2 in a way, kind of, or in a lot of other games. They do the same sort of system to make it so it's not completely gambling, where you can, it's like if you open a Black Lion chest, right? Eventually you get enough Black Lion statuettes or whatever.
Way after.
Way
Guild
after.
Wars 2 way after.
Well, Guild Wars 2's mount stuff was changed within a month. They were fast, and the outcry of frustration was swift. So it was definitely a thing. And I think that the discussion at that point, you have to break the discussion in two. Is ESO's store and that kind of stuff pay to win, or a discussion about gambling and RNG and MMOs, or in video games in general? This is not new to this is not an MMO centric discussion. In fact, MMOs were way late to the game. MMOs had to copy other games that were doing that RNG pack system. MMOs came to that so
way
late.
Later,
it was first person shooters and gacha games and stuff like that were big into that. People made tons of money doing that kind of stuff. But I think it is a nuanced discussion. That's the dichotomy is there. It's two different things: RNG and then also the.
Well, also ESO has a subscription, and their subscription comes with cash shop currency.
But see,
So you
that's what
don't
I was
have
talking about, though.
exactly. And that I feel like that makes a huge difference because you feel like, okay, you're paying a subscription for all of these benefits, but you're also being given the same price of your subscription toward purchasing things in their cash shop. So it's like if Guild Wars 2 had a subscription and then they just gave us that amount of money
Yeah.
to buy things in their shop. So essentially you're not even paying a subscription then if you're going to be spending that money in their shop.
But see, that's what I was talking about. That's what I was compelled to buy was the subscription. And Deshaun listed a bunch of other stuff, and I didn't agree. I wasn't compelled to buy. I was just like you, Junie. Nothing else I felt like I needed to buy at all in ESO. But that's because I felt compelled to buy the subscription because it literally solves any
It's
problem
dumb
you
not
could
to.
have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's be very clear on like what we're discussing. So for those of you who are playing Guild Wars 2, you know that the game as a whole is what we would call a buy to own, right? That's what it's supposed to be. You buy the game at the store. It does cost money, right? You can't just download it for free. You got to buy the game to own it. But once you own it, you own it. There's no sub fee, and anything that you buy in addition to that is supplementary. You don't need to. It's not requiring you to do that. A new expansion comes out and you have to buy it, but you buy it to own it, and then you just own it, and that's all there is to it. In Elder Scrolls Online, it is which is another AAA big, I think they just hit their 8th anniversary. They've been around a long time. ESO has a very interesting system where you buy the game, you buy the expansion as it comes out, and there is a sub fee, but the sub fee is optional. You do not have to, it's basically like an unending trial. You can play the game for free once it is technically buy to own, but there's a subscription fee, which is the typical subscription, about $15. And when you do that, you get a slew of advantages that are almost impossible to ignore. So most people say it's basically a sub game. You have to do that if you really want to play that game. And they look at that like it's a negative thing because they're like, I have to do it to compete in any way. It gives you an unlimited storage capacity so that all of the crafting stuff that you ever get is put into a bag. It basically fixes your inventory management completely. You get experience bonuses for leveling up. It makes it so that every DLC for the game, in which there are dozens, I don't know, it's like unlimited DLC for that game, you get access to it, all of the DLC, as long as you are subscribed to the game. So there's like a slew of things that make it feel like you absolutely must subscribe. But then what Junie and Cryptic are talking about here is that it costs $15 and you get all that stuff. But then they also give you every month $15, exactly $15 worth of gems. Or in their case, it's called crowns, but it's the same thing. So it's like you're buying $15 worth of gems, so it's basically a sub fee that pays for all that stuff and gives you access to all the DLC, but you're also just guaranteeing yourself the ability to buy $15 worth of stuff from the gem store every month. If you want my opinion, it's probably my favorite system that exists. What that ends up meaning is that it's not like, like you got to pay for this. It kind of sucks. It actually makes it so the game has basically the best trial you could ever imagine. If you own the game or you've played the game, like I think base game is free now, so you can play the game and come back to it anytime you want, right? This is what drives me crazy about World of Warcraft. Right now, I've been thinking about playing World of Warcraft, but if I want to go play, I got to decide ahead of time that I really want to. I got to spend $15 to even go find out if I want to, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that sucks. This is one of the greatest things about Guild Wars 2, right? New thing comes out, come back and play it, you get bored, you leave, right? Easy as that. Hey, I haven't played Guild Wars 2 in a while, let's log in and see what it's like. You can do that. And in ESO, you can do that as well, but you can also spend money to fund the game that you really like, and that game has more content with a more aggressive content release schedule than any other MMO I've ever played to date. And so whether you like it or not, you got to say it's working.
Well, that's true.
Right?
And I guess the other side, though, like what Anishan said about WoW and Final Fantasy 14, because they're kind of on the other side. Like ESO is kind of in the middle, right, of Guild Wars 2. Because in Final Fantasy 14, you are required to have a monthly fee. In WoW, you're required to have a monthly fee. Both those games, if you want to get back into that game, you have to start paying that fee again. So you can't just go in for a day, like you said, and see, oh, do I want to play this? Like it is a 30-day commitment, and you're putting that money in, and you're not getting anything for it for their cash shops. But it is true that in games like WoW or Final Fantasy 14, you're getting a lot of in-game content for free. So you're being offered a bunch of in-game mounts that you can get just for playing the game. And that and other styles and things like that. So, in Guild Wars 2, how much is really available where you're not pulling out your wallet, right? Like we do complain about that. Like, why aren't there cool mount skins available just for playing the game?
So there's the real balance, right? That's the big thing.
I mean, that's my question. What things should be gated behind monetization? Where's the line, right? Like, I mean, we've talked about pay to win, and I think that there's a line there that most people would agree upon about when you're paying for something that gives you a distinct advantage over other players in in anything, but specifically more so in competitive like PvP and PvE things where you have a statistical advantage over someone else. But where do we draw the line saying this is just bad business practice, where this is just the fact that that players can't earn any mount skins in game is bad for the consumer and bad for player enjoyment. Is there a separate line there that games can cross? Has Guild Wars 2 crossed that line by not providing mount skins to the general public? Should XPAC, should we be gating people from playing with their friends? Like we talk about ESO, the sub fee, without the sub fee, you have a ton of content to do. You really do. You have a ton of content. But with this, if you're the only one out of your group of friends that isn't, you can't afford to pay that sub fee, and you've already bought the game, you've already paid for the game, you are cut off from a bunch of content that your friends are playing and they may want to do that. Is that okay? Is that acceptable?
Well, remember, you can independently purchase the DLC if you'd like. True. You can purchase every DLC by itself. You can buy every expansion separate from each other. You can make it so that you don't need a sub ever, and you could just play it pay to win or pay to own if you would like to. That is an option for you. I like this system because it expresses both. You can treat it like a perfect trial, like is basically what I do. And then when I decide I want to play it, I do sub. Or you can treat it like, I'm not into that. I'm just going to do it this other way and spend money independently. There are definitely a lot of things in the gem store. So I would actually liken the gem store between Guild Wars 2 and ESO to be very close to each other in terms of the kinds of things they offer. There's a lot of fashion. There's a lot of convenience. You can buy, in fact, in that gem store, you can actually buy specifically things that are like bank access, right? Like unlimited bank access, unlimited merchant. You can buy those kinds of things from ESO. What I like about ESO, and to answer your question, Cryptic, I think the answer is yes. I think the Guild Wars 2 has some great stuff, but it has crossed that line for me anyway. I want to be able to, I'm like Andushan, right? He just said, logging into a level 1, right? Buying a set of cosmetic gear that looks like your max level badass really ruins the immersion and the feeling of an RPG. And I can get behind that. I can understand that. I would like things, I don't want there to be no things to buy in the gem store. Like I said, when I get into World of Warcraft, I wish there were more things I could buy if I wanted to. But I shouldn't look flashier and cooler than the guy who's been raiding for 6 months. You know what I mean? Like there should be a balance that comes there. And I think that ESO strikes that balance better than Guild Wars 2 does, because you can buy a lot of cosmetic unlocks, but there's a ton of cosmetic unlocks, many more that come from doing the actual game. You could buy personalities. I've talked ad nauseum about personalities in ESO and how cool they are. You can unlock those from the gem store. There's also certain ones that are gated behind really awesome hard raids. Mount skins, lots of the coolest, craziest mount skins in the game come from the gem store, but also can do from the game itself. And so when I go back to World of Warcraft, one of the exciting things that hit me, right? I'm like, oh, I'm not in Guild Wars 2 anymore. There's reason to go and grab all my buddies and go and do some old school raids, right? Let's just grab 5 of us and go do Ice Crown Citadel and see if I can get this badass mount skin that I never got back in the day, right? Let's farm transmogs by going back to content and get all this cool stuff, because all the coolest mounts and armor and gear and all that stuff, it's like it's all in the game. So WoW is on extreme end on one side, and then Guild Wars 2 is on the other extreme. I like the balance of ESO, actually, to be honest with you.
And I think it gives you the most options. Just the fact that they let you buy the little DLC packs if you just don't really want to have to deal with a subscription. That's just something that it is about options. And you do get things like, even with the houses in ESO, right? There are houses that you can get, very nice ones if you've been playing the game, and some of those community events that are fantastic. So it feels
like my Sigic Order house, man. It's so cool. You got that just for playing the game.
Exactly. So it does feel like at least the options are there, and you can take advantage of the ones that you want and then play the game in other ways if you don't want to.
Yeah. And Andushan is right. I think it defines the RPG experience, right? And I'll just tell you, like, and I'd like to know it from you two as well, what your first MMO was and how that monetized itself, because this sort of, I think it sets the expectation for what, Junie? You look so excited for a second.
Well, it's because I started in the weirdest, well, not really the weirdest MMO, but I started with a very strange, not mainstream exactly MMO, and it was a very strange monetization system that was absolutely pay to win.
So, go ahead. What is it?
Okay,
I'm going to ask you both,
surprise,
and I'll give mine as well.
Fiesta. If anyone played that, I
Yes,
never
I know
even got to max level. I only played it for a few months.
Lizzie says Wizard 101.
Oh my god, I actually
You played that?
I played that also, Lizzie, but I played that after Fiesta. So Fiesta was, you bought these things. I forget exactly how it was, but you bought these things in order to enhance your gear, and it was random. And so you had to keep putting it in, and it was like rolling a dice to get better stats and better cool things on your gear. And then you could sell that gear, I believe. So in these little shops that you would put out in the middle of like the main plaza area. So yeah, I mean, it was absolutely pay to win. Like I said, I never got to max level, and I didn't experience that game for that long, but yeah, crazy.
Well, my experience is linked very closely to what Andushan is saying, because when I started playing, the first MMO I ever played was EverQuest. A lot of you guys who know me know that that's true. I talk about it all the time. EverQuest was very weird and ahead of its time, right? Like, most people did not have to log in. Like, you bought that game from the store. It was buy to own, right? So, or it was buy to play, sorry. And then it was a subscription. And the concept of that in the year 2001 or whatever, when I started playing that game, was unheard of. Like, they had to like give you the warning when you buy it at the store. I went to oh god, what was CompUSA? Does anyone remember CompUSA? I walked into CompUSA and I saw the big display for EverQuest. Did you play EQ, Ian? Oh my god, how have we never talked about that? That's amazing. I'm a huge EverQuest enthusiast. So I ended up seeing this game, and I bought it, and I walked to the clerk, and he's like, "Hold on, I have to warn you because there's been complaints. This game requires an internet connection. First of all, I know this is dating me. This makes me look very old. But they're like, it requires an internet connection. You have to have a good computer, right? You have to have like actual ability to do graphics of some kind, and you have to sign up on something online and spend money every month to play it. I mean, like, the concept of that was unfreaking heard of. And I remember, like, month after month, like, if I were to go back to EverQuest and look at the payment history, there would probably be like 17,000 different credit cards, because I would just go to different people and be like, I've scraped together quarters, take this and let me use your credit card for a month, because I was a kid and I didn't have that. And every person that I talked to was like, that's freaking weird. What are you signing up for on the internet? And so it's this crazy thing. But you start off at the lowest of the low, right? And when I would go to Ecom Tunnel, for anyone in the know, and you would see like the big badass guy standing there with the shiniest, coolest armor, right? I knew there's no store you can buy that from. I looked up to those dudes in awe. You know, I was like, holy crap, I want to be that guy someday. And I sucked as a newbie like forever, right? And leveling up was super hard. And then eventually I got into raids. I got some cool stuff. I did my epic weapon. I started looking like a badass. And guess what I did? Guys? I went back to Ecom Tunnel. And I sat there. I just sat there like a badass, just for no reason, so that someone else could have the same experience with me, right? Like, oh, look at that guy. And it was so... That is an intrinsically amazing experience for an MMOs for me. And while I love Guild Wars 2 to death, it's my favorite MMO, right? There's so many things that I would say it is the very best in. As somebody who raids more than 99% of other gamers and puts a lot of effort into end game, the coolest stuff, when you see the coolest, flashiest dude running by, that guy bought all of that. You know, he pulled out his credit card and he could buy all that stuff. Me, from raiding, I look like a bum. Not only do I look like a bum, I have no transportation charges because they don't drop from raids, and I'm just like it just kind of is a weird counterbalance, right? So like, that's how the game was monetized for me. It was subscription. I think it was $13 when it first started, and then it moved to $15, and then it just basically never changed. I think $16 is basically like what it's been for the last 20 years. But that is the system that I was used to. And I'll tell you guys right now, anybody out there, I was that guy. I was that kid that was like, dude, subscriptions suck. I want my game to be free. I got to spend money for this video game? That's dumb. This game's free. I'm going to go play this one. That's way better. And I'm telling you guys, after getting older, which is one thing, and then also playing a game like Guild Wars 2 for 8 years or 9 years now, I have learned something about myself and about the genre. This is my game. This is my life. I met my wife in this game. I met my friends in this game. I spend all my free time in this game. I no longer look at it like this is these jerk-offs that are making me spend money to play this content. I want my game to be successful. I want it to have content. I want it to have a reliable content release schedule. I want them to ask for money in the right ways so that my game can succeed, because if Guild Wars 2 had a content release schedule like ESO, dude, I'd never play another game in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
so I rant
absolutely.
over, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I know, I agree with you, and I think, you know, that would be if you could name something that Guild Wars 2 could offer as a way to say, okay, now I'm ready to pay a subscription. Everybody's opinion obviously is different of what is the coolest looking gear. You know, maybe somebody thinks that a level 30 piece of gear is their favorite. And I definitely like some of those pieces, but it would be nice to have something that just looks a little extra special and have it really be gated behind not just throwing money at the gem store to turn into gold to get a legendary, but like Marek said, like to make it so that if you've been raiding every day for an entire year, you get something that just looks absolutely amazing and badass. And if somebody looks at you, they're like, oh my God, like there's not many people are going to have that, because it is at the end of the game and it is just content. And maybe they need a subscription or something to be able to offer that content, but I think that would be worth it.
I wish it did. I wish it had a subscription fee. I know that it's too late, guys, so don't pile on me. I know this is a seriously hot take in terms of Guild Wars 2 players. If they added a subscription to this game, there would be riots in the streets of Divinity's Reach and people would just lose their collective shit. I totally get it. But I do believe that the game, I wish that it had more funding is what I want, because like Ian, I believe Guild Wars 2 has a lot of heart. I believe it's a great, ANET is a great development company. I think that the game has a lot to offer. I want it to be bigger and better. And it doesn't, like, you're right. The skins are subjective, right? So maybe somebody thinks that the stuff that comes from in-game is actually cooler, but there just needs to be more. There needs to be more of that. Like, why not give us a mount skin or two in the game? Like you chairs are a great example, right? There's chairs, you throw chairs in the gem store, people buy chairs, but there's some chairs you got to raid for or do some
I love the
interesting
raid
stuff
chairs.
And that makes them exciting.
Example. That's a perfect example, the chairs. If they could move the chairs the way they set that up to mounts and to maybe other skins, that would be great.
Yeah.
So I think before we get too close to having to wrap
up,
we
didn't hear what your first MMO was and what its
my
system.
first MMO? My first MMO is not like any other MMO out there. So
what is it? Oh, it's not Eve, is it? Is it Eve? Oh God. Never mind, I regret asking. Just forget about it. Put your spreadsheets away, Cryptic. Put them away.
So I mean, Eve is a sub-based. I mean, I think it still is a sub-based game. At the time when I started playing, subscription was the only thing that you could pay for. You couldn't pay for anything else. Quickly after I started playing, they added the ability to pay for Plex, which is basically like gems in Guild Wars 2, and then you could Plex was game time, so you could then either use that. So you could basically, it was a way for people to earn game time in game without without affecting the in-game economy too much, because it was player driven, and then B, also allowing people to take real money and put it into the game and get something out of it that way.
Could you sell that game time that you had built up?
Well,
so
yeah,
is it like, what I'm asking, is it like World of Warcraft with the game tokens or whatever that they ended up doing?
I mean, are game tokens physical items that can be lost and destroyed?
Yes. Well, yes. So you buy them with real money, and then you sell them in the game to other players for gold. It became the way that they sanctioned gold buying and selling inside the game and took a cut from it,
Yeah, that was basically Eve's way of, that was CCP's way of sanctioning RMT, right? Of being able to. So real money transfer for anyone that doesn't know. So basically, that's what it's the same thing. The only difference is, of course, in Eve, you can lose things permanently. So if you didn't apply the game time, if you were moving it from place to place and someone blew you up, they could then steal that or or it could be destroyed by RNG. Some
Do
of
you
the
mean
biggest
open world PvP, Cryptic, where people
yes.
rob you?
Yes,
It's pretty hardcore, man.
Yeah. It's not all spreadsheets. It's
I see. It's also piracy.
There are spreadsheets that have pew-pewing in it.
Oh man, Ian is right. Eve is a whole experience, and it's one that I'm not ready for. I love space. I mean, look at all my Star Trek stuff back here, and I play Star Trek Online, but I would never be able to. I don't know. Eve is.
There are parts of Eve you would love, and there are parts of Eve you would not love. But
think of STO and Star Trek Online's very unique monetization.
With the lifetime subscription.
Well, I believe they had a monthly subscription.
They did
when they originally launched, and then they turned it into a free to play. But you could buy a lifetime subscription for currency, like ESO, right? You buy the currency ahead of time, and you get all this currency on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
Oh, for the lifetime sub. Right. Yeah. Just so you guys know, when it's on sale, on sale, like double sale, there's a sale and then there's a double sale. It goes from $400 to $200. So it's a big investment. But if you know that for sure, like I have the Star Trek Online lifetime sub, and it has since paid for itself because the amount of gems that you are given for free every month. So eventually it was worth it.
But Eve now has progressed to basically similar to, I would say, maybe like ESO. I don't know. There's a lot that you can buy skins. You can buy obviously game time. There's still a subscription. And even encourages alts. You can't really play the game without alts of some form. I mean, I did for the longest time when I was flat broke and a kid. But Eve does not. Eve kind of gets you to make more accounts. And you can pay for a single account can have multiple characters training at the same time, and that costs money. So the monetization has gotten pretty heavy in Eve, and I think a lot of that is due to they got bought by who bought Eve Online?
I have no idea.
I will look it up in a second, but
I've often wanted to find like a good sci-fi MMO. Like I like that kind of stuff. There's very few of them though these days.
They got bought by, I should have known this. I thought it was. They got bought by Pearl Abyss, the people that make and run Black Desert.
Oh no.
Wow.
Cryptic is a big fan of Black Desert Online. I think Tiffy is still in here too, and Tiffy also likes and enjoys that game. There are certain elements that so we brought up Lost Ark, and we didn't even really talk about, like, some people in the chat were talking about, like, the way that Lost Ark and probably BDO, but certainly Lost Ark and other Korean or Asian MMOs tend to monetize is much more in terms of, like, what you would expect in a gacha game, right? Like, there's a lot of RNG, there's a lot of systems, and the systems of leveling up your gear or leveling up your character, various forms of character progression require various currencies. It's a very mobile game sort of feel to me. Lost Ark is very much like this. I don't know enough about BDO to complain, but there's a lot of things that you can whale your way into victory in terms of games like Lost Ark, and you want to log in every day to do this thing every day and spend money to make sure you don't miss anything. Like there's so much of that kind of stuff, which is a huge turnoff for me. So like that is a way to Humes is in chat. I'm sorry, I know you love Lost Ark. Like the actual gameplay of Lost Ark is great. I got turned away by the systems, the story, the gameplay, the classes, the combat. Wonderful things, but systems can just mess up an MMO. Like it really can.
Well, and I mean,
Phoenix.
And this is a little off topic, although we were talking about this, Merrick, on our walk the other day. And maybe this will be a topic for another podcast in the future, but we were really digging into what makes an MMO and why we feel like maybe Lost Ark didn't quite feel like an MMO. So definitely something to talk about for the next one.
Good question. Do you feel like Lost Ark is a real MMO? Pseudo MMO, perhaps?
Oh, it's hard to answer that question. It's very, if it isn't, it's very close. But again, what is an MMO? Like,
Any game that makes 10 people attack a tree for an hour is an MMO.
Oh no, is that the criteria?
That's the criteria.
For me, the answer is no. Oddly enough, and I think that's because there's some objective criteria for like what constitutes an MMO on paper, and then there's also subjective things that are like unique to a person. For me, I think among a great many other things, like if you were to push me on it, the list is very long of things that I think that constitute an MMO. But the thing that is sort of intangible, like the intangible things, come down to immersion. So like world immersion, right? Like I have made a character. I am this person exploring this fantasy world or sci-fi world or whatever it is. That isn't really on the list, right? Massively multiplayer online role-playing game. Like none of that really denotes the necessity for that element that I'm discussing. But for me, that is an essential part of what makes up the makeup of an MMO. So by its very nature, I can enjoy a game that is isometric, right? An isometric top-down view. I can enjoy that, but I will never be able to feel that world immersion if I can't zoom in and look around. I can't see the sky. I will never feel immersed in it, and it will never be a real MMO for me. It just won't. So that's just me. And again, on paper, this is a different discussion, but for me, what makes an MMO, I couldn't get it. I like Diablo. I like Path of Exile, right? I love them. I play them with friends. Do I consider them an MMO, and do I get immersed in the world in the role-playing way? The answer is no.
You know, you talked about all the other stuff you talked about as far as what makes an MMO, I think are, like different aspects that apply to you that, make the world make you feel like you're a part of the world.
Yeah.
The one thing that you hit on that I find very important in games in general, I won't just say an MMO, that I've only experienced in one MMO is feeling like the character you created is a part of the world and is unique. And no other MMO has done that for me except Eve. Because in every other MMO, I go through the story, I play through the story, I do all this other stuff. I'm the hero, blah, 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 blah. But everybody else is also the hero. And
You're
I see
the
all these
commander.
other people.
No, I'm the commander. You're not the commander.
Well, I thought I was.
No, it's me. I am also the warrior of light. I hate to let you guys
I'm
down.
the commander, though.
No, it's me.
I thought Roz was the commander.
Roz is the real life commander. That's different. Oh, he was in the.
He was in the box. He's not in the box anymore.
He left the cube.
But that's
on the loose.
That's my concern, or not my concern, but like that's my thing, and I kind of have to suspend my disbelief when I'm playing an MMO. Whereas when I'm playing an RPG, and I'm talking about RPGs, when I'm playing like Elder Scrolls or any of these other games, you
legit are the hero.
You are, and you feel like
and you're the only one.
And buying into that world is so easy, right? It's hard in MMO, and Eve is the only one that I've never had to do that because Eve, you aren't the hero. You're a capsule. You are an exceptional person in the universe. Like you are a special person in the universe. There aren't infinite capsuleers, but you know that there are plenty more of you. You are not one unique shining star in a sea of millions. You are, a shining star in a sea of thousands, of thousands of other shining stars. And that feels, when I see another capsuleer, I don't feel like, oh, that person just broke my immersion because they have the same ship as me. I'm like, no, I know where they got that ship from, and that's going to be a tough fight, or, I should say hi to them because they have the same ship as me, like that. It feels appropriate.
So that's a really good question. I love that discussion. So so how do you feel like it would work better? Would it be an improvement to somehow find a way to make the experience of fooling you into being the only hero? Like would that be better? Would it be better if they improved the way in which you were the commander, or is the game better off getting rid of the commander feeling altogether? And the reason why I ask this is I'm going back to EverQuest again. I hope Revem is still in here. The reason for that is that we were given tools later, right? And I want to shout out Guild Wars 1 here, because Guild Wars 1 was basically the first ever freaking game to really capture this. But the tools didn't exist to even pretend that you were special in the beginning. And the reason why was because instancing did not exist. When you made a character in EverQuest, there was no way to do a trigger, right? A story trigger to like turn a corner and have an NPC go, oh, it's you. adventurer, come help me. My village is burning. I've heard great things about you. Come save my flock or whatever. They couldn't do that because the game had that same NPC had to be ready for the next dude that walked around the corner, and it just didn't work that way. You weren't allowed to change the world in any way, so there was no triggered storytelling. You were just one of a bajillion faceless people in the world of Norath, which was EverQuest. There was no way to do that. And then I remember the exact expansion, Revem, it was, you had to go around hailing everyone. The exact expansion was Lost Dungeons of Norath. They came out with LDON is what it was, Lost Dungeons of Norath. And in there, when you would go into a Lost Dungeon, it was an instanced affair. And that was the first instancing that ever existed. Every city, every zone, anything you ever did was shared with every other player that just happened to be in that zone. And there wasn't even instancing of zones. It wasn't even like, I'm in East Commonlands 1 and you're in East Commonlands 17. Like, that didn't exist either. So everybody just had to share the world that existed. But when Guild Wars came out, it's funny when we decided like what constitutes an MMO, because Guild Wars 1 was barely an MMO. Guild Wars 1 was about as much of an MMO as Diablo or Path of Exile, which is that only the hub cities are shared with other players. Everything else, every single bit of combat, every single bit of story or mission was in completely instanced content, which means that all of a sudden an MMO is capable of telling a story and capable of pretending that you were making an impact on the world that you were in. So it changed drastically. But which do you think is better? Should it be that we're all the Warrior of Light, or none of us are?
So I actually think that a hybrid system is actually probably for the best. And I'm thinking more along the lines of ESO. I think what I'm looking for from an MMO only ever is going to exist in something like EVE Online. Like, I just don't think that any other MMO is going to be, because they want to replicate the RPG experience, right? They want to replicate something similar to D&D, something similar to, World of Warcraft, any Elder Scrolls, any RPG. They want to I should have said Warcraft, not World of Warcraft. But anyway, they want to emulate this progression and the feel of being the hero saving the world. And even if that hero has other people in his party, that's what they're trying to emulate. Yeah. And EVE is unique in the fact that that was never even remotely on their radar. That's not something they were ever intending to do. And the game that they built amplified that decision making in the story, in the storyline. And so I don't think any other game is ever going to provide that for me. I think that's a feeling, and maybe it developed because EVE was the first MMO that I played, but I just don't see any other MMO ever being able to do that. I think that some kind of hybrid system would be better. And I think Elder Scrolls ESO does a good job of this, Elder Scrolls Online, because you feel like you fit in the world. For me, it's easier to suspend my disbelief because I know all these other people are doing all these other things, right? Some people are from this area of ESO. Some people are from, where the, Khajiit homeland is, or, where the,
elsewhere.
Elsewhere. There you go.
I got you, bro.
Or from
you see all this Elder Scroll stuff back here? We're nerds.
Some people are from Skyrim, right? Some people are from, all over the place. From the Imperial homeland, all over the place, and they're doing different things. There's Cyrodiil. So many storylines there. Cyrodiil. There's so many storylines there. Thank you. You're doing good, man.
Gotcha, man. That's why I'm here.
There's so many different storylines there that it's easier to fit your character, to suspend disbelief and fit it into the world, and understand that, this other person, they're probably from somewhere else. You see what I mean? Like, the suspension of disbelief is easier. And if we could have like a middle ground there, like, it is impossible for me when I am in a meta event in Guild Wars 2 and we're fighting, a dragon or anything. We're fighting anything, like, in my mind, I'm the commander, and I look around at like Torquato. I'm the commander, and I look around and everyone else is the commander.
No, it's just me. When we're fighting Suwan and Suwan's like, do this, you're like, I know she's talking to me, and I'm relaying the instructions to all these plebeians, that are hanging out with me. They're just, I'm commanding the army, basically.
You're commanding the army. Okay,
I'm the commander.
I see. You're the commander. Okay.
So like, since we're Guild Wars players, right? Like, Guild Wars 1 did this in a very interesting way that Guild Wars 2 kind of copied, but then kind of went off base with, right? In Guild Wars 1, you were nobody. You were a faceless hero. Faceless, nameless hero. The story was told through the party, right? Through the heroes that you were hanging around with. They all had names. They had stories. They had identities. It's like Ritlock and Logan and all this stuff. in Guild Wars 2, we became the commander. At first, we were the boss, right? And Cryptic and I were talking about this. When you go back to season 2, when you're doing Living World season 2 for the Return to stuff, you remember that you were just the boss. And we say, hey, boss, hey, we got to go talk to the boss. Like, we were the boss. And then we became the commander when it became like, this big sort of thing. But in Guild Wars 1, it was much more like you were kind of just along for the ride with all of so the story was being told through other characters that had real stories and real names. And it was an interesting way to do that. You're still waiting for a G.I. Joe MMO, Highway? Dude, I'm like such an MMO nerd. I want everything that I love to have an MMO. Like, we just watched Harry Potter, did a whole Harry Potter marathon. I'm like, why isn't there a Harry Potter MMO? I want to join Gryffindor and make a Gryffindor character and run around and fight the Slytherins or something. I just want everything to be like that.
So we should start wrapping up. Unfortunately, I would love to keep talking about
this. Oh my God, it's 9:32. How did that even happen,
yes.
Dude?
But I want real quick, rapid fire. What is something that games, specifically MMOs, do in monetization that you cannot stand? And what is something that you want MMOs to monetize more? And it can be specifically Guild Wars 2 if you want, but anything in general, a positive and a negative. For me, I'll say off the bat, loot boxes. I know we talked about.
You're gonna take you're gonna take the ones that Junie and I would do right away. Okay, you go.
Okay. I'll save mine then. I'll come up with something else. You guys go. You guys go.
Can I go first?
Junie, you go first.
Okay. Yeah. No. Or anything that is random RNG, specifically paid RNG items. I don't feel like they have a place in anything much except for in a casino. So that's my opinion, especially anything that even is slightly toward children, slightly toward anybody who's under 18. If somebody who's under 18 is playing your game, I don't think that should be in there at all. So that's my personal opinion. It is definitely my negative. There's other ways to do it. My positive, the way I think that is a good way to monetize MMOs, I think, is subscriptions. I think subscriptions are great for future content, and I'm fine paying them. I think having a subscription-based model is consistent. It helps the business, it helps the company, and it gives you an idea of okay, I'm going to put this amount out. And I mean, the subscription fees are so reasonable. I was, just talking to Marek about this the other day, the fact that subscription fees haven't really gone up in 20 years or something.
True.
That's insane, and that's great, and it's very reasonable, and it's cheaper than going to the movies one time for the whole month, and you're playing this game.
Talk about something that has not stayed the same.
Yeah.
I mean, it was $8 in the beginning. So relative to a subscription to an MMO, it was different. But now it's $40 freaking to go see a movie at the movie theater. So it's way cheaper to just play an MMO.
That's true. All right, Marek.
Yeah, I'll go next. I like Junie. I think the subs are great. I think that's something that we're allowed, that allows us to contribute to the game. I would rather spend the money on the entertainment that I want to succeed, right? It's way more relative than it is to spending money on a movie. You spend money on a movie, they get paid for something that's already done. But I want this game to keep going and keep making new things. I want them to make money. So a subscription for me, I find that it just helps the game more. I think that I would love to see more things monetized. You guys have heard our speeches in the past about Guild Wars 2. I wish that they would do player housing. Steal that straight from ESO. It's a great way for players to role play and experience the game in this sort of sideways progression, like setting up your own goals and own fun things in this theme park MMO that we love. Housing would be perfect. That's really monetizable, right? I also like the idea of monetizing skin, character animations, things that more ways to express ourselves in the game. There's a lot of things that you can monetize in Guild Wars that aren't being monetized. I swear Guild Wars 2 could be you know what? I wish we had double the money. Let's just make a couple of things that people could buy, and they would buy it and it would work. I promise it would work. ANET, if you're out there, player housing and more character customization, right? Sell us the ability to change our mechanist mechs. Please, I'll give you money. I'll give you money. Who in chat would not spend money to change the stupid green mechanist mech?
Oh my God, I would love to make it pink or something. That would be great.
Anything, dude. There are things that we would spend money on. And one of them is not an MLP MMO. NG.
I would.
NG, you stop this right now.
Yes, that would be super cool.
Okay, you go, Cryptic.
So, I mean, I think NG probably hit the nail on the head there. I mean, that's what America's looking for. So,
Whoa.
an MLP minigame is what you want.
I'm
Something
gonna
can...
throw things at
There
you next
is an
time I see you.
MLP phone game,
There
Cryptic.
you go.
Boo.
But it's very much a gotcha, like cash grab thing.
Okay.
See what happens.
So I actually really dislike, since you guys took a lot of the good ones, I really dislike
Should have gone first.
I dislike things that are heavily overly monetized in a game. And what I mean by that is not we've got so many cosmetics in here. I mean, when they take, like, let's say an armor piece, right? Like an armor set or something, or skills. We talked about Path of Exile doing this with skills, and it's great that they let you customize skills. But every single skill is broken out into its own individual thing, and the prices aren't that bad, but it starts to add up on you, right? And I feel like companies have to find their own moral line, and they're pushing it more and more with different ones. Apex is crazy. I know it's not an MMO, but Apex Legends, it costs so much for anything in that game. Any kind of cosmetic is ridiculously expensive. And I just, we talked about Rogue Company. We like Rogue Company's monetization because it is so reasonable. It is reasonable to get a skin. It is reasonable to complete the battle pass. Is reasonable. It's like, what, $20 to complete a battle pass? It's like $100 to complete a battle pass in Apex. It's absurd,
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So it's, to me, that really drives me nuts that, Apex is extremely successful. Rogue Company is not. It's a marginally successful game. You can find a middle ground and still be a successful game without charging these ridiculous prices, And we would all hate if Guild Wars 2 came. We'd love it if they came in with monetization for housing, but then we'd hate it if it cost you $20 for a candle, right? Like, that would drive you insane. So those are the kind of things.
No.
Okay, I guess it does depend on the candle.
Just kidding.
If it's Codwell with a candle on his head and he does a bunch of animations,
Cadwell?
Cadwell. Yeah, then that's fine.
I have Cadwell.
Thanks, Cadwell. That's awesome. Cadwell.
I love him. It's John Cleese, the legendary John Cleese. Sorry.
But if it is like a kitchen set and it comes with candles and it's $20, that's an acceptable price. And companies have to learn to find that line better. Guild Wars does a pretty good job of towing that line. Other games don't. And I wish that there was a standard, right? I wish that there was a summit that we could all go to and say, X game, you are charging too much for your candles. Candles need to be cheaper.
We need to make a summit and then drag everyone there and yell at them.
We do. And to keep the good things short, I guess really I just want to see more, just like you said, Merrick. I want to see more customization. I want to see companies want to monetize the parts of their game that they're trying to, that they are pushing out to players. And we've seen that with Guild Wars 2 as far as like fishing rod skins and boat skins and stuff like that. But to me, that shows a lack of business aptitude for them to not lay out all the stuff that they are going to be introducing in expansion. Okay, they weren't introducing player housing. I get that. You don't have to shoehorn that in if that's not what you want to do with your game. But all the stuff that they did lay out and not say, okay, guys, how do we monetize all of this? In a way that doesn't upset our player base.
Yeah. Why you think they'd be heavily incentivized to really work on these things?
They should be.
This is literally the way they make money.
Exactly. Why can we not customize Jade bots, Jade mechs? Why can we not? All of these things that we should be able to do. Why wasn't there a huge plan for new Guildhall items that should be shuffling in, that should be monetized? Some that are free, some that are monetized. This should all be part of an X-Pack release. It should be one of the most important parts for them as a business, because this is where their money comes from. This is what's going to, the X-Pack, the money that came in from the X-Pack is just funding the lights, right? The money that comes in from the cash shop is what is going to pay for the next expansion. So, they can't just think, oh, we're just going to keep the lights running. They have to have a plan to pay for that next expansion, which they already told us we're getting. So, those are the kind of things that's the good that I want to see from, companies. I want them to see monetization as, if players are going to accept it as not a bad thing, which I feel like we have, then, they need to focus on doing it the right way and incorporating it in not only, as many aspects of their game as they can without it being negative and an egregious thing, but also being something that players can count on going forward. People should be able to count on customization and not feel, one way or the other about it.
I agree. I totally agree.
But I think that we should probably wrap up there. I wish we could have gone on for another hour.
I was because I'm biting my tongue because I have many more things I want to say. But as soon as I start talking, like it just goes and goes and goes. Junie and I are late for raids that we have in Guild Wars 2. They were 10 minutes ago. I'm so sorry to everyone if you're in the chat that is in our raid squad. We love you guys. Thank you guys for coming. This has been Coffee Break. Obviously, the timing of this has changed. We're now going to try to run them on Tuesdays. We will always update people based on the schedule ahead of time. We also post on Twitter. If you guys want to follow, when we're going to do it, what we're going to talk about, make sure to join the Discord, you guys. Follow those links that NG just posted. This is where we discuss the topic ahead of the podcast. You can get involved in the discussion. We'll let you know what the topic's going to be. For all of you guys out there in TV land watching this on YouTube, we love you. Thank you. Please post questions down below. I respond to every comment. We do have a guy who's been just posting comments every time he's watching a video. He's going back through all the podcasts. It's been awesome. I love that stuff. So thank you very much. Smash that like button, subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff. All right, guys, we love you. Thank you so much, Cryptic and Junie, for being a part of this. Thank you guys at home for being a part of it. We really appreciate it. It makes the discussion so much more fun. You're beautiful, amazing. We love you. And thank you again to our Ko-Fi subscribers. We love you guys so much. Our amazing friends Null Point, Origin, and Maddox. Those are the absolute legends at the top tier of Ko-Fi subscribers. NG, next off, and absolutely the best moderator in the world. Pink Attitude, Dallin Zhang, and of course, Andushan, dude. I love you, bro. Thank you for all of the support. Have a great night, guys, and we will see you next time. Bye!